In the heart of Toledo, Ohio, on a Tuesday morning that felt more like an overcast sight than a day with promise, Dorian Ellison stood at the school bus loop, head down, backpack swinging off one shoulder. The air was damp and gray, the kind that makes your breath turn white the second you step outside. The grass looked tired, as if it had given up on spring. It was the kind of day where even the sun seemed to hold its breath. Dorian's denim jacket, faded, frayed, and far from fashion-forward, was the center of attention, though not in a way he wanted. The left sleeve was worn near the cuff, the collar sagged slightly, and there was a dark spot near the right chest pocket that hinted at oil or old paint. But the true target of ridicule wasn't the fabric itself, it was the large patch on the back, a bold image of a bald eagle with wide wings, talons gripping arrows, and a striped shield. Though the stitching showed wear, the patch still bore an unmistakable pride. For Dorian, it was more than just a piece of clothing, it was a symbol of someone important who never got the jokes and never heard the cruel laughter. His grandfather's legacy, passed down without explanation, carried weight far beyond its fabric. At first, the teasing was light-hearted. "Hey, yo, thrift store. They want their trash back." JB and Roy barked, always needing an audience and finding one in the group of kids chuckling behind him. Some laughed louder than others, while others simply enjoyed the show. Aaliyah, a girl who usually avoided confrontation, whispered something behind her hand and giggled. Dorian shifted his weight, heat rising in his ears, but kept his face still, eyes fixed on the cracks in the pavement. The joke wasn't clever, none of them ever were, but that didn't matter. Every time they laughed, it pulled at something buried deep in his chest, as if they weren't just mocking the jacket but the man who gave it to him. "Did your grandpa get that off a cereal box?" Javon taunted, gesturing dramatically toward the patch. "What's it even mean? Bird Club?" The comment drew a louder reaction, even from sixth graders standing near the side doors. Dorian clenched his jaw, thinking briefly about saying something, maybe even telling them to shut up. Instead, he adjusted the strap on his backpack and walked past them, no words, no eye contact. But inside, the silence did nothing to protect him. The laughter followed him into the building and clung to him like a shadow. By third period, the damage had already been done. Someone had drawn a crude version of the patch on the whiteboard in Mr. Gregory's history class, adding a top hat and glasses to the eagle and labeling it Captain Fashion. Mr. Gregory erased it before class started, but not quickly enough. The damage was done, more snickers, more whispers. Dorian felt like the patch itself was growing heavier by the minute. He sat at his desk, shoulders low, trying to hide the jacket behind his chair, but it was no use. The denim rubbed against the backrest, loud in his ears, a constant reminder. Even in the lunchroom, he couldn't escape the mockery. A group of eighth graders passed his table, making exaggerated eagle sounds. One flapped his arms, shouting, "Yo, look out, he's going to take flight." Dorian didn't look up, just stared at his sandwich, slowly picking apart the crust with his thumbs. Maya Cruz, one of the few students who never joined in the laughter, leaned in and asked, "You good?" He nodded, lying through his teeth. She didn't press further, just opened her juice box with a loud pop and changed the subject. It was a small mercy, but later in gym, the jokes kept coming. Javian imitated a military voice, "Ellison, drop and give me 20. Then, with mock seriousness, "Sir, yes sir, my jacket says I'm qualified." More laughter followed, but Coach either didn't hear or didn't care. By the end of the day, Dorian had zipped his hoodie over the jacket, but he still wore it. He always did. That jacket had belonged to someone who mattered, someone who never backed down from anything. Dorian wished he could wear it without feeling like it was dragging him down instead of lifting him up. But tomorrow was Veterans Day, and the way his mom looked at the calendar that night made him feel like it wasn't just another school day coming. When he got home that afternoon, he didn't go straight to his room. Instead, he stepped quietly into the den, dropped his backpack by the door, and turned toward the one corner of the house that never changed. No matter how bad the day had been, the shelf remained untouched. It wasn't fancy, just an old wooden bookcase against the far wall, partly chipped, leaning slightly to one side. On it sat a folded American flag in a display case, a few black and white photos, a set of dog tags, and an old, faded photo of a man who looked like a tougher version of Dorian himself, same strong cheekbones, same serious eyes. Ronald R.J. Ellison, his grandfather. That jacket, the one everyone at school loved to hate, used to hang in Argie's closet. Dorian's mom never talked much about her father, not in stories, not even on his birthday. But after he died, she gave the jacket to Dorian without saying a word. She didn't need to. The first night he wore it, he could still smell the cologne woven into the denim, an old-school aftershave that made you stand up straighter without knowing why. Now, every day when he got home, Dorian looked at the picture, the same ritual, a nod, just once, then he'd sit down under the shelf, pull his knees up, and take a breath. But today, he didn't sit. He just stood there, jacket still zipped under his hoodie, backpack untouched and silent behind him. His mom walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "You all right?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Something happened at school?" Still quiet. She walked over and stood beside him, not pressing, not prying, she never did. But he knew she knew. After a long pause, he spoke, eyes still on the photo. "They made fun of the jacket again." His mom didn't flinch. She just looked at the photo too, her lips pressed together like she wanted to say something but didn't. "I could wear something else," he offered. "I mean, it's old." "It's not like I don't," her voice cut in, firm. "You wear what you want. They don't get to decide what matters." Dorian looked up at her. She wasn't mad, just tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for a long, long time. "What did he do, really?" Dorian asked. "Pup, you never told me." She blinked once, slowly, then glanced at the folded flag. "He served. That's all. That's it. That's enough." But Dorian wasn't so sure. At school, he served wasn't enough to stop the jokes or make Javon shut up or make the 8th graders stop flapping their arms like birds. "I'm tired of being the joke," Dorian muttered. "I know," she said, softer this time. "They don't even know what it means, that patch." He turned to her, frustration crawling up his throat. "So what's the point? Why wear it if no one understands?" His mom placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Because you understand. That's the point." She walked back to the kitchen, leaving Dorian standing there, staring up at a man he never really knew in a jacket nobody respected, except him. He sat down on the carpet, leaned back against the wall, and looked up at the shelf again. One photo showed RJ standing in front of a military truck, arm around a buddy, both young and laughing, uniforms dusty and sun-bleached. Another showed him in front of a building marked with faded letters, *camp. Dorian stared at the picture, looking for something, a clue, a connection. Something inside him whispered, "You're wearing more than a jacket." He didn't know what that meant yet, but it stuck. And the next morning, for the first time, Dorian almost left the jacket behind. The next day started with silence, the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace but from hesitation. Dorian sat on the edge of his bed, the morning light cutting across the floor in pale slices. His alarm had already gone off twice, but he still hadn't moved. Socks on, shirt half-tucked, hair uncombed, and on the floor, draped over the same chair as always, was the jacket. He stared at it like it was a decision he didn't want to make. Down the hall, he heard the creak of the bathroom door. His mom was getting ready for her shift at the medical center. That meant he had maybe 15 more minutes before she called out, "You eating or not?" His stomach rumbled, but he didn't move. Part of him wanted to stay home just once, fake a cough, say he felt weird, anything to avoid another day of people pointing, smirking, and mocking something that meant everything to him. Then something unexpected happened. From outside came the sound of tires crunching slowly over gravel, followed by a soft knock at the door, 2 knocks, then one short, 3 taps, like a code. Dorian paused. Nobody ever came that early, not friends, not neighbors, not males. He peeked out his window. A black SUV was parked in front of the house, not flashy, not tinted like a government car, but clean, plain. Standing next to it was a tall man in full military uniform. Dorian blinked. The man didn't knock again, just stood there, arms behind his back, eyes forward, waiting. Dorian rushed to the hallway. "Ma," he called. Her voice floated from the bathroom. "What?" "There's a guy at the door in uniform." A pause. Then her footsteps. She came out in scrubs, eyes half lined with eyeliner, toothbrush still in her hand. "What kind of uniform?" "Army," he said. She squinted through the window, then something changed in her face. Her lips parted barely, and she took a small step back, like someone had punched her in the gut. Her eyes didn't move. "What is it?" Dorian asked. She didn't answer right away. Then softly, that's General Hanley." "You know him?" She nodded. "He served with your grandfather back in Iraq. But I haven't seen him since the funeral." Dorian's mind raced. Why was a real general, at their door? His mom opened the door slowly. "General Hanley," the man nodded, removing his hat with quiet respect. His hair was cropped short, silver at the temples, and his face had the kind of lines that didn't come from smiling too often. "Mrs. Ellison. Sorry to come by unannounced. I'm here for the Veterans Day Assembly at Central Middle." Her eyebrows rose. "Your office sent you my address last night? I hope that's all right." "It's fine," she said, still unsure. "I passed by your boy this morning, yesterday before the bell. Didn't say much at the time, but I recognized the patch." Dorian stepped into view, still barefoot, still unsure. Hanley looked at him, not like a stranger, more like someone who already knew something important. "That jacket, it belonged to Sergeant Ronald Ellison, didn't it?" Dorian nodded slowly. Hanley's voice softened. "I'd know it anywhere." His mom's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Your grandfather was my squad leader in 2005, Hanley said, eyes still on Dorian. "I owed him more than one life. That patch, what he wore on his back, wasn't just a unit symbol. It meant you didn't leave your people behind. Ever." Dorian swallowed hard. Hanley nodded toward the jacket. "May I?" Dorian looked at his mom. She gave the slightest nod. He disappeared back into the room and returned a moment later, holding the jacket gently in both hands, no hoodie to hide it, just denim and history. The general took it carefully, running his fingers over the faded patch. "Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, Iraq 2004 to 2006. Your grandfather led our convoy out of an ambush. Cost him his hearing in one ear. Saved 9 of us that day, including me." He handed the jacket back with both hands, solemn. "Don't ever be ashamed to wear this." Dorian took it, hands trembling slightly. Hanley adjusted his hat. "I'd like to mention his name today at the assembly, if that's all right." His mom nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "He'd have liked that." Hanley gave a crisp nod. "See you both there." He turned and walked back to the SUV, no drama, no long goodbye, just purpose. Dorian stood there, jacket in hand, heart pounding. His mom looked at him. "You still thinking about staying home?" He shook his head. "No," he said. "I think I'm going to be early." But what waited for him at school wasn't just another assembly, and the moment by the flagpole would change everything. It was barely 7:25 a.m. when Dorian stepped off the bus the next morning. The sky was streaked in pale orange and blue, the kind of early color you only notice when you're nervous or waiting for something you don't quite understand. He wore the jacket again, no hoodie zipped over it this time. No hunched shoulders. He didn't strut, but he didn't shrink either. The patch was there, right on his back, just like yesterday, just like always. And like always, Javon was already at his usual spot near the flagpole with a few of his boys, talking too loud, waiting to be noticed. Dorian braced himself. "Look who showed up again in that dusty coat," Javon muttered. "You ever washed that thing?" One of the boys laughed, but it didn't land the same. Maybe it was the way Dorian walked past them, quiet but solid, Or maybe it was the black SUV pulling into the faculty lot just behind the gym that made the boys glance over their shoulders. The SUV rolled to a stop, and a moment later, the door opened. Out stepped General Clay Hanley. His boots hit the ground with slow, deliberate weight. His uniform was sharp, his name tag polished, and his gaze straight ahead, not cold, not showy, just serious like a man who'd seen things he didn't need to talk about. He didn't walk fast, didn't need to. The space around him shifted on its own. By the time he rounded the corner toward the front entrance, conversations had started to die down. Kids turned to stare. A few teachers inside the building paused mid-sentence as he passed by the windows. Then he stopped, right at the flagpole, right next to Dorian. He didn't speak right away. Just looked at him, then looked at the jacket and that patch. Javon muttered something under his breath, but it was too quiet to catch. Nobody laughed this time. Finally, Hanley said, "Morning." Dorian swallowed. "Morning, sir." The general's eyes flicked to the small crowd now gathering by the entrance. Some curious. Some confused. "You know what you're wearing?" Hanley asked. Dorian nodded. "My grandfather's jacket." Hanley tilted his head. "And that patch?" Dorian hesitated. "I know he served. I know he was in Iraq. I just, didn't know the rest." Hanley took a breath, then turned to face the patch full on, like it was something sacred. "Your grandfather led one of the most decorated infantry units in the Middle East. When others hesitated, he moved. When orders were unclear, he made the right call. When we were trapped, he drove the Humvee straight through gunfire to get us out." He glanced down at Dorian. "That patch meant you didn't flinch, not for anything." By now, the small crowd had become a quiet gathering. No phones out. Just eyes and ears. "Why'd you come here?" Dorian asked quietly. Hanley didn't hesitate. "Because you reminded me of him. Standing out here yesterday, wearing this jacket like it was just another piece of clothing, like it didn't weigh a thing." Dorian looked at the denim on his arms, the frayed edges. "It feels heavy most days." Hanley nodded. "It should. That's how you know it means something." Then, turning toward the group of students slowly circling around them, Hanley raised his voice just enough to be heard. "I'll be speaking today at your assembly. I'll mention your classmates who have family in the military. But I'll also talk about courage, not the loud kind, not the kind that shows off. The kind that wears an old jacket even when everyone's laughing." His words hung in the cold morning air like breath. Then he looked at Dorian one more time and said, "Softer now, thank you for not taking it off." Then he stepped away into the building, gone just like that. Javon stared after him, then looked at Dorian, and for once, he said nothing. Dorian exhaled, slow and deep. For the first time since he'd started wearing it, the jacket didn't feel like armor or like weight. It just felt right. But the assembly hadn't even started yet, and by the time it ended, the entire school would be talking about that jacket for a very different reason. Dorian Ellison's story is not just about a jacket. It's about the weight of legacy, the strength of silence, and the courage to wear what matters, even when the world doesn't understand. From the moment the general arrived at Dorian's doorstep, the narrative shifted. What began as a simple act of defiance, wearing a jacket that others mocked, became a powerful testament to identity, heritage, and honor. The jacket was no longer just a relic of the past, it became a bridge between generations, a symbol of resilience, and a lesson in humility. General Hanley's appearance wasn't a random event. It was a message. A reminder that some stories are worth listening to, even if they're carried in silence. It was a message that history isn't always written in books or headlines. Sometimes, it lives in the folds of a jacket, in the lines of a photograph, in the quiet strength of a person who never sought recognition. Dorian's grandfather, Sergeant Ronald R.J. Ellison, was a man of action, not words. He didn't ask for medals or accolades. He didn't crave the spotlight. But when it counted, when the world was uncertain and danger loomed, he led. He moved. He protected. And in doing so, he earned a place in the hearts of those who survived because of him, including his grandson. For Dorian, the jacket was more than a piece of clothing. It was a conversation between past and present. A question of identity. A challenge to rise above the noise of the world and embrace the truth of who he was. When the general spoke at the assembly, the gym was packed. Rows of metal folding chairs lined the floor, all pointed toward the makeshift stage near the scoreboard. Flags hung from the rafters, state, country, and school banners flapping slightly in the draft from the old air ducts overhead. The room buzzed with the usual mix of fidgeting, whispering, and shoe scuffing that came with any school assembly. But this one felt different. The principal opened the program with polite words about Veterans Day, sacrifice, and respect. She stumbled slightly through the names of former students now serving overseas before introducing the guest speaker. Please welcome General Clay Hanley. He stepped onto the platform with that same slow walk, spine straight, expression calm. He wasn't a large man, but when he spoke, the room quieted without effort. I've worn this uniform for over 30 years, he began, but I didn't come here today to talk about medals or battles. I came here because of one boy. Dorian sat dead center in the third row. Every eye seemed to shift toward him. Yesterday morning, I noticed a jacket. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't new. But it had a patch, one that meant everything to me. He took a step forward. The patch of Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, Iraq 2004. Silence. You don't know those names. You weren't there. But I was. And so was the man who wore that jacket before it belonged to Dorian Ellison. A murmur went through the gym. Hanley's voice didn't change. Sergeant Ronald Ellison was the kind of man who didn't ask for recognition. He never gave speeches. He didn't like the spotlight. But when it counted, when things got bad, people followed him. He paused, letting the weight settle. Because they trusted he'd get them home. Dorian swallowed hard. His fingers curled under his chair. The general scanned the rows of kids, many now sitting up straighter than they had all morning. Some of you made fun of that jacket, he said, not accusing, just matter of fact. Some of you pointed, laughed, and asked what it meant. You thought it was just old fabric, something to mock. A few heads dropped. Javon shifted in his seat but didn't look up. Hanley looked at Dorian again. I asked him this morning if he knew what he was wearing. He said it felt heavy. I told him it's supposed to. He turned back to the crowd. Because history is heavy. Sacrifice is heavy. Courage, too. No one moved. Then he stepped off the stage, walking straight toward Dorian's row without breaking stride. He stopped in front of him and asked the question that had been echoing since the beginning. Do you know what that is, son? Dorian stood up. Everyone watched. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. It's my grandfather's jacket. Hanley nodded once. And what does it mean to you? Dorian thought for a second. It means he didn't quit, even when it was hard. It means I shouldn't either. The general placed a hand on his shoulder. That's exactly right. The gym stayed silent for a few moments. Then someone started clapping. It wasn't loud or forced, just a slow, steady rhythm from the back row. Others joined in. By the time Hanley returned to the stage, the whole room was on its feet. And Dorian didn't shrink this time. He sat back down slowly, hands folded, jacket still on. And now, it didn't feel like a target. It felt like armor again, but a different kind. The kind that doesn't protect you from pain, but gives you the strength to stand in it. The story didn't stop at applause. Because after the bell rang, the hallway had something else waiting for him. When the assembly ended, Dorian didn't expect anything to be different. He figured people would go right back to their friend groups, their TikToks, their usual lunch tables, just like they always did. But walking through the halls after third period, he felt it. Something had shifted. Not in some big, dramatic way. There weren't posters or slow claps or anybody shouting his name. But eyes lingered a little longer. People who used to snicker didn't say a word. And it wasn't just the silence. It was the space. The way people moved out of his path, not like they were scared of him, more like they saw him now. By the lockers, Aaliyah, the same girl who used to laugh behind her hand, stepped aside when he walked by. Then, quietly, she said, "Hey. Your grandfather sounds like he was a good man." Dorian looked at her, surprised. She wasn't joking. She wasn't being sarcastic. "Yeah," he said, nodding. "He was." She offered a soft smile then walked off. A little further down, Mr. Gregory, his history teacher, pulled him aside. "You know," he said, "I read about Delta Company after the assembly. Had no idea your grandfather was part of that unit." Dorian shrugged, not knowing what to say. Mr. Gregory put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for sharing him with us." Dorian nodded. "I didn't really mean to." "That's the best kind of sharing," the teacher said, then walked off. But the biggest surprise came later, right after lunch. Dorian was heading toward gym class when he noticed someone trailing behind him, close enough to feel, but quiet. He glanced back. It was Javon, alone. Dorian kept walking. He wasn't in the mood. But then Javon called out, not loud, not cocky. "Yo, Dorian." He stopped. Turned slightly. Javon stood there, with his hands in his hoodie pocket, shifting awkwardly on his feet. "That jacket, my uncle was in the army, like, for real. But he never talked about it." Dorian didn't say anything. I didn't know what that patch meant. I thought it was just some thrift store thing." "It's not," Dorian said quietly. "Yeah," Javon said. "I get that now." A long pause hung between them. No apology, not directly. But Dorian didn't need one spelled out. Javon looked away, then back again. "You ever think about going into the military?" Dorian blinked. "Not really." "Well," Javon said, scratching the back of his neck, "if you do, I'd want you on my side." And just like that, he turned and walked off, no punchline, no joke. Just a moment. Later, the coach pulled him aside too. "I saw Hanley talk to you," he said. "He's not the kind of man who throws words around lightly. That patch on your back, he's right. That's weight. And you're carrying it well, son." Dorian didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded. That night, he got home and went straight to the den. Same shelf. Same folded flag. This time, though, he stood taller. For the first time, he reached up and touched the glass that held the dog tags, cold beneath his fingertips. His mom walked in quietly. "You okay?" she asked. He turned to her. "I think I want to know more about him." "About what he did." She smiled, not big, not wide, but honest. "I'll tell you what I can. And what I can't, maybe the general can." He nodded. "Maybe you can bring the jacket to school on Monday," she added. "Tell the story in your own words." Dorian looked down at it. He didn't feel like hiding anymore. "Yeah," he said. "I think I will." But something else was waiting outside their door the next day, something his grandfather never got and Dorian never expected to receive. Sunday morning arrived with the sound of birds tapping at the window and a sky so clear it almost looked painted. Dorian was still in bed when his mom knocked softly. "There's someone here to see you," she said. He rubbed his eyes. "Who?" "General Hanley." Dorian sat up fast. "He's out front?" She nodded. He got dressed quicker than he ever had on a weekend. Yanked the jacket off the back of his desk chair and walked out to the porch. There he was again, Hanley. Same boots. Same presence. But this time, something was different. His hands weren't behind his back. He wasn't there to inspect or lecture. He held a folder. "Morning, soldier," Hanley said with a small smile. "Morning, sir. Can I sit?" "Yeah. Sure." Dorian pointed to the porch steps. They sat down, side by side. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Hanley opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of service records, newspaper clippings, faded letters, even a scanned photo of R.J. Ellison in uniform. This one, in color. I asked around, Hanley said. Got permission to pull what we had on your grandfather. Thought you should have it. Dorian stared at the pages. He didn't know where to begin. There's stuff in there I didn't even know, Hanley continued. Like the time he stayed behind during a base evacuation to help an injured translator get out safely. He didn't mention it in reports. Just wrote, did what I could. That was your grandfather. Dorian flipped the page. There it was, an award citation from 2005 for bravery under direct fire. He looked at the name at the top, Sergeant Ronald Ellison. That patch on your jacket, Hanley said, we used to call it the shield. Because that's what your grandfather was to us. Dorian didn't know what to say. His fingers rested gently on the page, like it might disappear. I've seen a lot of medals, Hanley added. But the people who earned them, they don't wear them on their chest. They wear them in how they walk. How they talk. How they treat people. And sometimes, they pass them down. Dorian looked down at the jacket. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like part of him. Later that afternoon, Hanley left, leaving the folder in Dorian's hands. And when his mom asked if he was nervous about school the next day, Dorian smiled, for the first time in a long while. Nah, he said. I think I'm ready. Monday came. Dorian stepped into school like he'd always belonged there. This time, no one whispered. No one joked. But that wasn't the win. The win was that they saw him. In homeroom, Ms. Green announced that anyone with family who served could bring in something to share. Dorian didn't wait. He raised his hand. I brought my grandfather's jacket, he said. And I brought who he was. He stood in front of the class, jacket zipped to the collar, and read one of the letters from the folder out loud. His voice cracked once. Nobody laughed. He told them about the patch. About Delta Company. About the Humvee and the translator and the firefight nobody else ever mentioned. He didn't ask for pity. He didn't ask to be respected. He just told the truth, and the truth was enough. That afternoon, in the hallway, someone had written on the whiteboard near the main office. Thank you, Sergeant Ellison. No one claimed it. No one erased it. And the gym teacher asked if Dorian would like to help raise the flag the next morning, just him and a couple of other students who had family in the military. He agreed. When the time came, he stood tall by the pole, jacket zipped, fingers on the rope. He didn't flinch at the stairs anymore. He didn't feel small. He felt seen. When the flag reached the top, he stepped back, looked up, and thought of the man in the photo on the shelf. He didn't have every answer. He didn't suddenly know who he was going to be when he grew up. But he knew what he stood for, and that was enough. Final thoughts. Dorian Ellison's journey is a powerful reminder that the stories we carry, whether in our clothes, our actions, or our silence, are often deeper than they appear. The jacket that was once a source of embarrassment became a symbol of pride, not because it was new or stylish, but because it represented something greater: courage, sacrifice, and legacy. In a world that often moves fast and mocks first, Dorian chose to stand tall. He chose to honor the man who came before him, not for glory, but for truth. And in doing so, he taught others that the weight of history is not a burden, it's a responsibility. A chance to remember. To reflect. To rise. So, don't be so quick to judge what you don't understand. Sometimes, what looks old or out of style carries a story bigger than all of us. Something someone loved. Something someone earned. We live in a world that makes fun first and asks questions later. But the things that really matter, they take time to see. Before you laugh at someone's shoes, jacket, or hair, ask yourself, what story are they carrying? You might just learn something. If this story made you feel something, share it. Let it remind someone else that even the smallest acts of courage can echo through generations.